Saw you having a conversation with Ebro, and you said that there was no brotherhood. That made me sad. Maybe one day things can get figured out.
Oh, who knows? I mean, maybe it can.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I don't see that happening right now. Right now, I'm on a mission. I ain't got time to be rekindling, bending backwards, none of that. I've done that too many times in my career when it came to the sake of the diplomats.
Jim Jones is a walking headline factory, CEO talk, culture architect, viral instigator, Harlem diehard. Depending on the day, he's the guy who named a TV empire, the artist who outworks legends, and the general who never ducks pressure. But when the story he tells meets the receipts everybody else keeps, the edges start to curl. Credits don't bend, charts don't blink, and old friends remember what they saw up close. The loudest surprises didn't come from a studio or a stage. They leaked out of courtrooms and crept through crew stories from way back. Let's walk through it. For years, Jim and Chrissy floated a version of history where love and hip-hop sprang straight from their living room. His brainchild, his title, his blueprint. It's a slick origin myth, because it feels plausible. Jim's personality fills a frame, and their relationship drama always had the kind of gravity reality TV loves.
I put it in the air. It's up to Jim and Max. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Max is locked up, man.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when I speak to Max, Max tell me he got more shit to worry about. When I speak to Jim, you know what I'm saying, Jim is on his own time. So, I mean, they both grown men.
But television doesn't award creator by charisma. It awards it by chain of title. The paperwork points another way. Trade coverage and on-screen credits have consistently listed Mona Scott Young as the creator and executive producer of the franchise. That's not a footnote, it's the foundation. In TV, there's a canyon between tossing out an idea and actually owning the format. Developing a sizzle, pitching networks, negotiating options, securing E&O insurance, staffing production, delivering a pilot, locking distribution, and scaling the show into a multi-city machine. Could Jim have sparked conversations or shaped early access? Maybe. Reality series often start near real couples and real chaos, and casts can influence beats, titles, and early arcs. But influence isn't authorship.
You ever wonder how he met Mano? He tried to press Mano one day because Mano first came out. He had a little record where he was saying, dissing the rappers. I don't know, he's dissing, he said.
The name in the created by slot is the person who bears the legal risk, holds the IP, and gets the back end when reruns and spin-offs cash out. Fans can admire Jim's on-camera pull and still respect how the business actually works. Ideas are cheap, signatures are expensive. A suggestion might season the stew, but the creator cooks it, plates it, and sells it to the network, then turns it into a franchise with Atlanta, Hollywood, Miami, and beyond. That's the difference between being in the story and owning the story. And that's why this debate lingers. Jim's version centers him as architect, not just talent. The credits center someone else entirely. The gap between I sparked it and I created it is where myth grows and where receipts don't blink. But if the credits are one reality check, the zip code debate is the first bruise to the myth. When people think Dipset, they picture Harlem, pink furs, flashy talk, uptown energy. Jim leans into it because it fits, because it sells, because it's part of the lore.
The song he's talking about is a song that put me in the game. It was a song called Room. About that is that I mentioned him in the song. I ain't mentioned Jim. Me and my tension came from me mentioning Cam.
Then Cameron popped up and tossed a bucket of cold water on the whole thing, claiming Jim wasn't really Harlem bred like that his roots run through the Bronx and his presence uptown was more proximity than pedigree. Does that erase the years Jim lived the Harlem lifestyle? No. But it muddies the narrative he's pushed like gospel. In New York rap, neighborhood is currency, being stamped locally matters. Early uptown names, Cam, Mace, Big L, Bloodshed, are treated like a founding class. If you weren't in that first room, people will forever debate whether you built the house or just moved in after the paint dried. Presence counts, but pedigree carries weight, and cosigns aren't the same as birthrights. When a co-founder questions your origin story, it hits harder than a blogger ever could because it reframes which parts of the myth were earned and which parts were adopted.
I see where Jim Jones is coming from. Like, I can see him, because if you're looking at the algorithms now, I can see where he's coming from. But you can't take the legendary status that what Illmatic has done. Just Illmatic. Illmatic itself has birthed Mobb Deep, has birthed Capone and Noriega, has birthed...
Territory talk is loud, but the next part is louder. When Jim went scorecard to scorecard with a rap deity. Every few months, someone points at the summit and says, I'm standing up there too. Jim took that swing, claiming he could out-rap his era's giants and nudging himself into a lane with Nas. Confidence is part of rap's bloodstream, but the moment you invoke stats, it stops being poetry and turns into accounting. And the ledger is lopsided. Nas stacks decades of album entries, a run of top 10s and number ones, trophies on the mantle, and a late career renaissance that didn't need trend chasing to hit. Jim's got undeniable moments, anthems that shook summers, mixtape runs that defined a street mood, but moments aren't the same as a museum wing. One is a flashbulb, the other is a gallery.
I feel like Jim Jones and Pusha T, they're on the same like calendar right now, but they're entertaining while they're using somebody else's name, right? But Jim Jones has been compared himself to Nas. He claimed he had more Billboard entries than Nas, a flat out lie.
Fans pulled up receipts, charts, awards, critic lists, even sidewalk polls. Podcasts echoed it, timelines turned it into a landslide. That doesn't erase Jim's grind, it just clarifies categories. Nas is legacy, curriculum and canon. Jim is impact and bursts, heat checks and headlines. Different lanes, different rulers. Jim tried to pivot the debate from bars to brand. Not just penmanship, but presence, not just couplets, but conversation. In 2025, that metric matters. Virality can buy you bookings, sponsors, and a second wind. But that opens a new argument. Which scoreboard counts? Charts measure reach. Critics measure craft, awards measure recognition. Virality measures velocity. You can win one column and still trail in the others.
One stamp.
Did he not?
You got plenty of stamps.
Yo, Wack hates Jim Jones so much, man.
I ain't got nothing. Blood is a rat. That's on
He's
him.
gonna super violate you.
He's a rat. That's on him. So at the end of the day, and you know what the 6ix9ine told us. You just be fun. Who was the number 2 if 6ix9ine?
Nobody don't care about rat no more, Wack.
Hold on.
Jim excels at staying topical. He can make the whole internet talk for a week. Nas excels at being timeless. He makes people listen for decades. When those two philosophies collide, the numbers don't shout. They simply sit there, daring anyone to pretend they don't exist. And the conversation that stuck the deepest didn't come from a podcast at all. It leaked from a federal courtroom, where transcripts, not tweets, set the tone for what came next. Jim's defense is simple. This isn't the 90s, this is now. Visibility is currency. If you can keep your name buzzing, win, lose, or meme, you get paid. He's not entirely wrong. Plenty of careers run on motion, not spotless catalogs.
For the sake of the fans and what the fans needed. But what about me? Do y'all understand how I feel? Or do y'all understand my side or what I'm going through? Like, y'all gotta understand that. Please understand that. So right now, I choose to focus on what I got going on. That takes nothing away from what I do for the bird. The bird always fly high.
Clips book shows, headlines book interviews. A 10-second soundbite can outwork a 6-month rollout. But there's a thin line between staying hot and becoming the main character for the wrong headline. You can build a brand off shockwaves. You can also drown in them. Attention is fast money. Legacy is slow math. The winners turn noise into narrative and narrative into numbers. The rest chase the algorithm until the treadmill throws them off. Which brings us to the wiretap shadow, the piece of audio that turned whispers into wildfire and yanked the conversation out of timelines and into transcripts. During the 6ix9ine proceedings, a recorded call made the rounds. Media described a voice identified in court as Jim discussing how a certain rainbow-haired star had to get violated. The internet did what it always does, turned a soundbite into a storyline before lunch. Here's the sober version. This lived in public reporting and courtroom context, but it never became charges against Jim. No indictment, no arrest. In legal terms, that's a cliff. Mentioned isn't charged. Alleged isn't proven. Prosecutors chase cases they think they can win. Spectators chase narratives they want to believe. Still, perception is a parasite. Once it bites, it lingers. If you spend years selling the image of a general rank reach calling shots, people will ask why your name floated through transcripts but never showed up on the paperwork. Supporters say that proves there was nothing there. Detractors say it proves the persona was costume grade. The truth most likely sits somewhere less cinematic. Investigations name a lot of people. Standards of proof are high, and not every headline survives discovery. But nuance rarely trends. There's also the industry math nobody likes to say out loud. Bookers and brands don't need guilt to get nervous. Risk is enough. A straight quote in a court summary can quiet a sponsorship call or put a soft cap on festival invites. It doesn't end careers, but it trims options. Jim's response was the veteran move. Keep working, stack appearances, and let the calendar push the clip out of circulation.
So many other people.
Like I looked it up to see like who gets searched more in 2025. It's still Nas. And it's still Nas by a long shot.
It's hard to beat Nas.
Okay.
Time sands the edges, but echoes don't vanish. They just get quieter. What kept the echo bouncing wasn't just the audio. It was the amplification. Commentators clipped, reposted, and reframed it as proof of everything they already believed. That's how the modern trial of reputation works. Exhibits chosen by engagement, verdicts delivered by views. Even if the courts close the file, the timeline keeps it open. And while that dust swirled, the West Coast threw its own storm into the forecast, accusations, park pull-ups, and an optics war that turned comments into courtrooms. Enter Wack 100 with a megaphone and a memory. He's accused Jim of everything from paying for a pass in Compton to ducking real pressure. Jim clapped back with clips from parks and parades, captioning posts like a field report. I was outside. It's part theater, part territorial politics, part comments section coliseum. Did a bag buy acceptance? Did clout chase credibility? Depends on who you ask and whether you think Instagram is evidence. The uncomfortable truth is that West Coast stamps are rarely just handshakes. They're histories, mutual favors, quiet intermediaries, and unwritten rules about who can film where. A video might look like validation to viewers who don't know the blocks. To locals, it can read like a cameo that ends when the camera shuts off. Wack plays prosecutor in public. Jim plays defendant, jury, and foreman all at once, posting, narrating, and rendering his own verdict, certified. None of it rises to proof. All of it sticks to perception. And perception pays rent in the attention economy. One reel can look like respect, another can look like cosplay. The truth lives somewhere messier. Relationships that started as business, protections that later felt like friendship, and the old rule that online smoke often hides offline understandings no one wants on record. What the back and forth really exposed was fragility. Street credibility doesn't transfer cleanly across zip codes, and internet proof is a moving target. Today's cosign can turn into tomorrow's clip with a different caption. If your brand leans on being stamped everywhere, every neighborhood becomes a pop quiz. While that looped on the grid, an older rift back home started to thaw, hinting at a different kind of legacy play altogether.
He was almost claiming like his catalog is better than Nas, a flat out lie. And now he's claiming that because he mentioned Nas, he got Nas the most viral publicity Nas has ever received. Another flat out lie.
There was a time when Jim and Max B felt inseparable. Hooks that stuck like summer air, melodies poured over street drums, a run where Bird Gang looked like a real movement. Max brought the wavy cadences and pen, Jim brought the engine and the look. Together they made records that felt bigger than either name alone. Then the floor collapsed. Legal trouble swallowed Max's calendar, and a personal betrayal narrative spilled into songs, interviews, and late-night studio whispers. The fallout went past rap sparring. Max didn't just toss subs, he aimed for pressure points, turning private history into public shrapnel and making the beef feel less like sport and more like scorched earth. Underneath the noise sat the ugliest part of rap family splits: credit and commerce. Who wrote what? Who owned what? Who collected on what? Publishing slices, ghostwriting pride, and management resentments became accelerants. Jim, for his part, tried to downplay the bond in public, shrugging off questions, acting like the chemistry fans heard was just proximity. That only hardened the lines. Listeners chose sides, and the story calcified. The loyalists left out in the cold versus the boss who closed the door when the lights cut off. But time is stubborn. Even from a cell, Max's tone softened. Measured call-ins, flashes of grace, the kind of perspective you earn when the days get quiet and long. He hinted that peace wasn't weakness, it was priority. Freedom first, then feelings. Jim didn't rush to match it, but he stopped adding gasoline. That matters. The absence of new shots is its own kind of message. And the longer the silence held, the more fans pictured some future detente. A handshake backstage, a surprise hook, a single that feels like 2008 with grown man margins. If that ever happens, it won't rewrite the past, but it will reframe it. Two artists who once made heat out of chaos choosing, finally, to make order. And it would say something larger about the scene itself, that legacy outlives ego, and that not every chapter has to end in fireworks to count. In an era obsessed with gotcha moments, a quiet reconciliation would be the loudest flex either of them could make. And if we're talking legacies, we have to talk about the flip no one predicted a decade ago. The business alignment that changed which doors opened and who answered, when Jim knocked. There's a multiverse where Jim never circles back to Jay. We don't live in that one. After years talking slick across records and radio, 2017 arrives and the headline lands like a plot twist. Jim aligns with Roc Nation on the business side. Maybe it was maturity, maybe it was opportunity, maybe both. What's undeniable is how that move reframed the ceiling. There are doors you can rattle from outside and doors you can walk through once you're on the email thread. For a guy who prides himself on hustler instincts, it was a checkmate. It didn't rewrite the past. It rewired the future. The practical shift was bigger than a logo on a hat. Alignment like that means infrastructure, tour routing that actually scales, brand decks that speak corporate, legal that anticipates problems instead of reacting to them, and a Rolodex that can turn idea into calendar invite. It also means a different kind of leverage. When your calls ride across sports, film, and fashion, the same story that once felt like an uptown legend starts getting told in rooms where budgets live. Suddenly, the always-on presence Jim built on social can be converted into clean sponsorships, festival slots with better placement, and partnerships that don't evaporate the first time a headline gets noisy. Of course, every pivot invites a purity test. The purist crowd swears these marriages sand the edges off street heroes that boardrooms turn generals into brand ambassadors. But longevity has its own rules. Hustle is a spark, infrastructure is a grid. The artists who last either stack undeniable songs or build undeniable systems. The smart ones do both. Plugging into Roc Nation gave Jim a chance to prove he wasn't just shouting for relevance, he could organize it, turn myth into management, chatter into cash flow. It also forced a subtler evolution in the narrative. You can't posture the same way once you're sitting in polished conference rooms. The bark has to share space with the brief. That doesn't kill the rebel energy, it just channels it. If the earlier era was about forcing doors open, this era is about deciding which rooms are worth entering and what to sell once you're inside. That's a different kind of power, and it ages better. Which leaves one last question for the closer. After all the credits, coordinates, scoreboards, transcripts, truces, and deals, what lasts longer, the legend he tells or the ledger everyone else can read? So what's left when the music fades and the comments stop refreshing? A complicated resume. Jim Jones is a survivor with moments that lit whole seasons on fire. He's also a narrator who sometimes stretches the edges of his own legend. The credit pages don't back one claim. The chart book shrugs at another. The courtroom echo haunts a third. Meanwhile, beefs thaw, alliances flip, and the man who once swore he didn't need certain rooms now takes meetings inside them. That's not hypocrisy, that's hip-hop aging in real time. The bigger question isn't whether Jim's story is spotless, it's whether the myth he sells is stronger than the math everyone else can pull up in 3 taps. In an era where conversation is currency, maybe that's the real scoreboard, who keeps the crowd leaning in, waiting for the next twist. If that's the game, Jim's still playing it better than most. But the myth only lasts as long as the receipts don't catch up.